50 years ago, it was the height of Beatlemania, but hearing the Fab Four on the wireless was almost impossible during the day.
This is the BBC live programme.
There we are, we've come round the Pips for 9 o'clock. Now let's go round the corner and meet Kenneth Horne for Housewife's Choice.
But there wasn't much choice. Apart from weekend programmes such as Pick of the Pops and Saturday Club, the only time you could hear regular pop music was at night, from the continent.
Radio Luxembourg, your station of the stars. And this is your DJ BA, Barry Aldous, bidding you welcome to the show, coming your way direct from our studios here in the heart of Luxembourg. And here on the turntable is the Beatles' new single straight in at number 1.
Can't buy me love.
But the signal invariably tended to fade just as the record started to play. That all changed on Easter Saturday, 1964.
This is Radio Caroline on 199, your all-day music station. We are on the air every day from 6 in the morning to 6 at night. The time right now is 1 minute past 12, and that means it's time for Christopher Moore.
Hello and happy Easter to all of you. This is Christopher Moore with the first record program on Radio Caroline. The first record is by the Rolling Stones, and I'd like to play it for all of the people who worked to put the station on the air, and particularly for Rona.
It wasn't the slickest of openings, but this was a revolutionary moment in broadcasting. It marked the end of the BBC's radio monopoly, but the authorities couldn't do anything about it. Radio Caroline was broadcasting from a ship anchored 3 miles off the coast of Felixstowe in Suffolk in international waters, and therefore outside the control of the British government. The man behind the venture was an enterprising Irishman, Ronan O'Reilly, a music promoter aged just 23.
It was impossible to get a massive amount of music that was available on record and an album, especially American music. It was impossible to, have it on the air, to be able to have radio played on it because of the airtime. I mean, there was no BBC pop. I mean, there were a few hours a week. They didn't take it very seriously, and there was the nighttime Luxembourg thing that was just geared to the record company's needs, and a very limited amount of exposure. So I remember very vividly recording a number with Georgie Fame. We'd recorded a number called, I remember, Let the Sun Shine In was the name of the track.
And let the sun shine in, come on right away. Let the sun shine in, brighten the body.
I remember getting an acetate of it, and then I went around to Luxembourg and the BBC in various places. And I remember sitting in Luxembourg and them saying, well, no way, we're not giving it any airplay because it's not belonged to one of the major companies, record companies. So I thought, well, there's only one way around that situation, and the only way around that situation was, in fact, the system of broadcasting that the Radio Caroline put together.
Sounds fine, it's Caroline!
Caroline's arrival had an immediate impact. In its first month, it claimed 7 million listeners, an audience of mostly young people, attracted not just by the prospect of hearing pop records all day, but by the informal style of its presenters.
And that, I'm afraid, winds up the early show from me, yours truly, Simon D, for this morning. My last one on board for, as I say, at least 2 weeks. Perhaps 3 weeks, perhaps forever. Perhaps you'll never
Simon D, the first voice on Caroline and its first star. Within 2 years, he had a twice-weekly chat show on BBC One. His career, like much of the early history of Caroline, came about almost by accident. So it was when Ronan O'Reilly came to christen his new baby.
The biggest influence at that time on me was, in fact, President John F. Kennedy. But the actual moment of decision to call this station, Radio Caroline, was made. I was flying across to America at the time, and right across the sort of center spread of the Washington Post was a photograph in his Oval Office, and climbing under his desk, disrupting the entire works of government, was one 3-year-old Caroline Kennedy. And that that's the moment when I said, that's got to be the name.
C-A-R-O-L-I-N-E, Caroline, Caroline, Caroline.
But the initial reaction from the outgoing Conservative government was largely to ignore Caroline, regarding it as a fad that would soon disappear. But 6 weeks after going on air, it faced an offshore competitor, just down the coast off Frinton in Essex.
Radio Atlanta, on our very first day, our Champers Day, bringing you brighter broadcasting and the finest sounds around.
At 201 meters, you're in tune with the Bob Scott Show, living, loving, happy Radio Atlanta, the ship that rocks the ocean.
Now the summer fun time here on the good ship Radio Atlanta stands.
But for a quirk of fate, Atlanta could have been Britain's first offshore pirate. The project had been devised by an Australian music promoter, Alan Crawford, 2 years before. He'd been in negotiation with Ronan O'Reilly, with both their ships being fitted out in the Irish port of Greenore, conveniently owned by O'Reilly's father. So not surprisingly, Caroline got the priority. George Saunders was Atlanta's chief engineer.
Alan Crawford told me that there had been a trading agreement originally between the two organisations. Miamigo was to go down to London and the Caroline ship was to go off the Isle of Man. It didn't work out like that, I'm afraid. The Frederica sailed first. She bombed it down to the Thames estuary and, of course, opened up as Radio Caroline. And there's a snag that they also had the crystals on board which controlled our transmitting frequency. So when we came along, we couldn't do anything. And we were sitting off Frinton, unable to transmit.
But within 6 weeks of Atlanta going on air, the two organisations were forced to make peace and restored the original plan.
Caroline, the sound of the nation. Caroline, the sound of the land. Caroline, the sound of the nation. Caroline.
It was